My new stepsister copied my whole life and lied about it online. Her whole fantasy life collapsed at her own engagement party. It all started when my dad married Wendy, and her daughter, Tessa, became my stepsister. At first I was hopeful. After all, a new family could mean new experiences, new memories. Maybe we'd even become close, like real sisters. But that wasn't the case. Instead, it felt like I was watching a stranger try to take over my life, piece by piece. Tessa was younger than me, but she quickly became obsessed with mimicking everything I did. It started with small things, like reposting my vacation photos, claiming to have visited the same places. I'd post a picture of my trip to Japan, and 20 minutes later, there would be Tessa's photo, with captions like, "Missing my favorite sushi place in Tokyo. Been going there since I was 12. I couldn't even laugh it off, it felt wrong. Tessa had never been to Japan. She'd never even had sushi until she moved in with us. I thought maybe it was a coincidence. Maybe she was just trying to fit in. But the copying didn't stop at my travel photos. It got worse. Tessa started taking my childhood photos from our family albums and posting them on her social media. She posted a picture of me at horse camp from when I was younger and captioned it, "Throwback to my equestrian days." She'd never been to horse camp. She'd never even ridden a horse. It was like she was trying to become me. She'd steal my academic achievements too, posting photos of my honor roll certificates, photoshopping her name over mine. My dad thought it was sweet, said it showed how much Tessa admired me. "Take it as a compliment," he'd say. But it wasn't a compliment, it was unsettling. I was losing pieces of myself, and no one seemed to care. Tessa didn't stop there. She would listen in on my phone calls, then post about experiences I was planning, acting like she'd already done them. I remember mentioning to my friend that I wanted to try rock climbing. An hour later, Tessa had posted a picture of herself with a caption like, "The mountains are my second home." She wasn't even a beginner climber. The whole thing felt like a performance, one that I wasn't invited to. But it didn't matter to my dad. He'd tell me, "She just wants to be close to you. She admires you." I wanted to scream. It wasn't admiration, it was theft. I tried talking to him about it, but each time, he'd brush it off. He said I was overreacting, that Tessa just wanted to fit in. And so I kept quiet, trying to convince myself that I was being too sensitive. But it didn't stop there. It never stopped. It wasn't long before Tessa started showing up at my college classes. She'd tell everyone she was auditing them for fun. She'd sit next to me and repeat everything I said in discussions, but louder. She even started claiming my friends were hers. She'd post about how she'd known people for years, people I'd only met recently. She told stories from my life as though they were hers. I was suffocating, living in the shadow of my own life. Tessa had started taking things that weren't hers to take, my memories, my experiences, my identity, and I was left wondering if anyone could see it. Could anyone else see how wrong this was? Or was I just losing my mind? That was when it hit me. This wasn't just imitation anymore. It was something darker. I wasn't just a person to her. I was a blueprint for a life she could never have. And as if that wasn't enough, Tessa started creeping into the most personal part of my life. She started showing up to my dates with Oliver, to the one part of my life I hadn't let anyone copy. I'd tell Oliver about a new restaurant I was excited to try, and an hour later, Tessa would check in there with a vague, "Perfect night with my special someone." It wasn't a coincidence. It was calculated. Every time I turned around, Tessa was there, mimicking my every move. I was being erased, and I didn't know how much longer I could take it. The final straw came when I got engaged to Oliver. We'd been planning it for months, and it was supposed to be a beautiful, intimate moment with both our families. But Tessa was about to take it all away. 3 days after my engagement, Tessa announced her own, and that's when the lies started to unravel. The moment I saw Tessa's engagement announcement, my stomach dropped. 3 days after my own engagement, she posted a photo of what was supposed to be our ring. It was the exact same angle, the same lighting, and even the same manicure. The only difference was her hand in the picture, not mine. I couldn't believe it. It was my ring, the one Oliver had slipped on my finger during our quiet dinner with both our families. I dreamed of this moment for so long, but now it was tainted. Tessa had stolen it, just like she had stolen everything else from me. I stared at her post, numb, trying to process what was happening. There she was, announcing her engagement to someone named Oscar, someone I'd never heard of. She said he was away on business, so nobody could meet him. I didn't know what hurt more, the fact that she was pretending to live the life I'd worked so hard to build, or the fact that no one seemed to question her. My phone buzzed with messages, but I couldn't bring myself to look at them. I already knew what people were saying. Everyone was congratulating her, thinking it was real, but I knew it was all a lie. This wasn't the first time Tessa had tried to make people believe she was living my life. It was the latest in a long string of stolen moments, all leading to this. And it wasn't just the engagement. It was everything. Tessa had copied my life down to the smallest detail. She'd started with my social media posts, reposting pictures of my travels, my family events, and my friendships, claiming them as her own. But it went deeper than that. She'd started claiming my memories, my experiences, acting like they were hers. She'd even started to change the story of how I met Oliver, taking our first date and twisting it into her own version. As if she'd been there all along. I couldn't take it anymore. I had to confront her. But when I tried to talk to my dad, it was like talking to a wall. He just told me I should take it as a compliment that Tessa admired me so much. She looks up to you, he said, like that was supposed to make me feel better. But it didn't. It wasn't admiration. It was theft. I tried to explain to him how it felt to see my life stolen in front of my eyes piece by piece. But he didn't understand. He couldn't. How could he? He was so wrapped up in the idea of blending our families that he couldn't see what was happening right under his nose. The worst part was how much he dismissed my feelings. He said I was being too sensitive, that I should just let it go. Let it go. I wasn't gonna let it go, not when Tessa was trying to erase everything that made me, well, me. That night, I sat in my room, the weight of it all crashing down on me. I kept thinking about the engagement dinner, how perfect it was. Oliver and I had planned it for weeks. Just the two of us. A quiet evening with both our families there to celebrate. I could still remember the warmth in his eyes when he looked at me, the way his hand felt in mine, the way he'd smiled when he proposed. It was perfect. And now, Tessa had ruined it. 3 days later, she was planning her own engagement party, and it was everything I had dreamed of. The same venue, the same caterer, the same color scheme. The only difference was that it was happening the night before mine. She'd even gone so far as to call and pretend to be me, getting all the details for her event under false pretenses. She was so determined to steal every part of my life that she'd made it her own. The morning of Tessa's party, I tried to convince myself that maybe I was overreacting. Maybe I was just being paranoid. But I couldn't shake the feeling that something wasn't right. When I saw her post about her engagement party, I knew in my gut that I was right. She wasn't just trying to fit in. She was trying to replace me. I wanted to scream. I wanted to confront her right then and there, but I knew it wouldn't make a difference. My dad would just brush it off again. Wendy would defend Tessa, like she always did, and I would be left standing there, feeling more invisible than ever. That night, I found myself at Tessa's party, standing in the middle of the room, trying to pretend everything was fine. The guests were all gathered, chatting, laughing, congratulating her, but I couldn't shake the feeling of being suffocated. The night stretched on like a bad dream, and every time I looked at Tessa, I felt like she was smiling at me, daring me to expose the truth. Around 9 p.m., after 3 hours of pretending like everything was normal, Tessa finally made the announcement. She said Oscar was stuck at the airport, but she wanted to share their love story anyway. That's when it happened. Oliver stood up. I still remember the exact moment. He cleared his throat and everyone's eyes turned toward him. "That's interesting, Tessa," he said, his voice clear and steady. "Because that's exactly how I met your sister." The room went silent. The air seemed to drain out of the space, and for a second, everything felt suspended. Tessa's face turned pale, her mouth hanging open, and I could see her hands shaking, like she was about to crumble. Bradley, one of Oliver's best friends, stood up next, pulling out his phone. He began scrolling quickly, showing messages and dates, proving that Tessa's timeline didn't match up. Oliver never mentioned anyone named Tessa, Bradley said, holding his phone up to the crowd. "He's been talking about Erin for months." "Tessa, you're lying." The whispers started almost immediately, spreading across the room like wildfire. Everyone began pulling out their phones, comparing notes, sharing stories. Tessa's carefully constructed world was crumbling before her eyes, and she couldn't stop it. The next few minutes were a blur. Tessa's attempts to explain only made things worse. She claimed that everyone was just jealous of her happiness, that they were twisting things around. But it was clear to everyone in that room that she had lied, and she had been caught. Tessa's world came crashing down, and as I watched her panic, I finally felt the smallest sense of relief. I wasn't crazy. I wasn't imagining it. People were finally starting to see the truth. But it wasn't just about Tessa anymore. It was about me. I had been living in a world where no one believed me, where I was gaslit by my own family. And now finally, I was being seen. The days after Tessa's engagement party were a blur of whispers, half-hearted apologies, and people trying to piece together the chaos. But for me, it was more than just a scandal. It was the moment everything I'd been feeling for months came crashing to the surface. I wasn't crazy. I wasn't paranoid. And I sure as hell wasn't overreacting. Tessa had taken everything from me, and now, finally people saw it. Still, the fallout wasn't as satisfying as I thought it would be. Yes, Tessa was exposed, but what did it matter when my father still couldn't fully understand what had happened? When Wendy's defense of Tessa hadn't wavered for a second. Even after all the lies, after the way Tessa had manipulated everyone, including me, Wendy was still the same. She blamed me for making a big deal out of it. She kept saying, Tessa didn't mean any harm. She just wanted to be close to you. That night, after the party, I locked myself in my room, the weight of everything sinking into my bones. I couldn't sleep. The constant buzzing of my phone filled the silence, messages coming in from friends, acquaintances, and even people I barely knew. They were all surprised, shocked, angry, and confused. Everyone except my father seemed to understand how wrong it had all been. I stayed in my room for hours, scrolling through messages, rereading the conversations. Some were messages of support, Others were simply people piecing together their own versions of events. They were all talking about Tessa's lies, the way she had recreated my life like a puppet show, with herself pulling the strings. It was hard to even look at her Instagram. Her account was flooded with photos that weren't hers, memories that weren't hers, achievements that didn't belong to her. But even after everything, even after being caught red-handed, Tessa's posts didn't stop. She had photos of herself in my clothes, at my favorite spots, claiming everything I'd ever done as her own. How long had she been doing this? How many years of my life had she been stealing, and why had no one said anything? The next few days felt like living in a dream. Tessa was nowhere to be found. She'd vanished after the party, and the only thing left were the memories of her crumbling world, the social media posts, and the shocked faces of the people who had once believed her lies. My dad, however, had barely spoken to me since the party. When he did, it was always about Tessa. She's just a troubled girl, he kept saying. She doesn't know how to handle these feelings. I couldn't listen to it anymore. He wasn't hearing me. He wasn't hearing how much I had been hurt by Tessa's behavior. And how could he? Every time I tried to speak about it, he would wave it off, as if I were the one being dramatic. But I wasn't. I had spent months watching Tessa take everything from me, and I had never been given a chance to fight back. No one had listened. That evening, when I finally saw my dad again, I had to confront him. I couldn't just let it go. Dad, I said, standing in the living room, trying to hold my ground. You don't get it. You just don't understand how deeply this hurt me. She's not just a girl trying to be close to me. She's been stealing my life, my identity, and you've done nothing to stop it. He looked at me, his face a mix of guilt and frustration. He had been quiet ever since Tessa's collapse at the party, but now, he finally spoke. Rin, he said softly, his voice cracking. I didn't know. I didn't see it. I thought it was just some phase she was going through. I didn't think she was really copying you. I didn't know it was this bad. The words stung, but they didn't feel like enough. He wasn't taking full responsibility for what had happened. You've known her for years, Dad, I replied, my voice rising with frustration. And you didn't think something was off. All those times I tried to tell you. You made me feel like I was crazy. I tried to explain it, and you told me I was being paranoid. He sighed and ran his hand through his hair, like the weight of everything was suddenly too much. I know, he admitted quietly. I should have listened to you, Erin. But I didn't want to believe it. I didn't want to believe that Tessa could do something like that. I couldn't stop myself from shaking my head. It doesn't matter now, I said, trying to keep my emotions in check. What matters is that you never believed me when I needed you. You took her side every time. And it made me feel like I didn't matter. He didn't respond. I could see the regret in his eyes, but it didn't feel like enough. There was a rift between us now, something that couldn't just be healed with an apology. The damage had already been done, and no amount of regret could change that. The next few days passed in a blur. Sure, I avoided Tessa's posts, but I couldn't escape her presence in my life. Every time I looked at my phone, there she was, more fake stories, more fabricated memories. I'd gotten used to it, sure, but now it felt like a constant reminder how far she was willing to go to become someone else. She didn't just want my life. She wanted my soul, my history, my experiences, sure. And she had taken them without ever asking. But I wasn't going to let her win anymore. That's when I made a decision. Sure. I was going to confront Tessa. No more hiding. No more pretending. I wasn't going to let her continue stealing from me without facing the consequences. She had made a mess of my life, sure. And now it was time to clean it up. I reached out to Oliver, hoping for a little support, but I also knew this was something I had to do on my own. I couldn't rely on anyone to fix this for me, sure. The night before the party, I sat in my room staring at my phone. Tessa had posted another photo. Sure. This time it was a picture of herself in my room, wearing one of my sweaters. I felt my anger bubbling up inside me. It was one thing to steal my clothes or my memories, but this felt like a direct attack. I couldn't just stand by anymore. I was going to confront her, once and for all. I stood up, took a deep breath, and started typing the message I'd been avoiding for weeks. Tessa, we need to talk, sure. I couldn't ignore it anymore. Tessa's fake engagement was the final straw. Sure. I spent the entire next day fighting back the urge to call her out, to confront her in front of everyone. But I knew that wouldn't be enough, sure. I couldn't just let her take everything from me and walk away unscathed. She had to understand the damage she had caused. I remember sitting in my room, the sunlight streaming through the blinds, sure, casting long shadows across the floor. The quiet of the house felt suffocating, like I was trapped in a bubble. Sure. My phone sat on my desk, the screen lit up with a series of messages I hadn't bothered to check. One was from Oliver, another from Jessica, asking if I was okay. I couldn't answer them yet. I needed to figure this out on my own. I stood up, walking to the window and looking out at the empty street. The air felt thick, heavy with the weight of everything that had happened. Sure. Tessa had built an entire life around my experiences, and it was hard to even breathe knowing she'd stolen it all. It wasn't just the pictures or the stories. Those were easy to dismiss. It was the way she had inserted herself into every moment that mattered to me. She didn't just want to be me. She wanted to erase me. I had to take control of my life again. I had to do something. The more I thought about it, the more determined I became. I couldn't let Tessa keep taking from me. Sure. She had to face the consequences of her actions. I couldn't let her hide behind excuses, behind my dad's misplaced sympathy. Sure. Tessa had been lying for months, and now she was going to answer for it. I texted her. It was short, direct. Tessa, we need to talk. I didn't expect her to respond quickly. She'd been hiding out since the engagement party disaster, but I knew she would see the message eventually. It was just a matter of time. As I waited, I could feel my heart pounding in my chest, or my palms starting to sweat. It was stupid, I told myself. I wasn't afraid of her. Sure. But that's how it felt, like a part of me was still scared. Scared of what she might say, of what might happen when I finally confronted her. But I couldn't run from it anymore. Tessa's response came hours later, much quicker than I expected. What's there to talk about? She wrote. I'm fine. Everything's fine. Her words made me angry, but I didn't let it show. No, it's not. You've been lying to everyone, including me. I'm done pretending I don't see it. Sure. It took longer for her to reply this time, and when she did, it was just one word. Stop. I could almost hear the panic in her voice. I wasn't going to stop, though. Sure. I wasn't going to let her twist things around anymore. I called her. The phone rang twice before she picked up. What do you want, Erin? She asked, her voice sounding defensive, sure, like she knew what was coming. I want you to stop pretending, I said, my voice steady, despite the fury bubbling up inside me. Stop acting like you haven't been stealing from me for months. You've been copying my life, my experiences, my achievements, and I'm done. I want you to admit it. I want you to tell me the truth, sure. There was a long pause on the other end of the line. Then, in a quiet, almost shaky voice, she finally spoke. I didn't mean to hurt you. That was it. That was the best she could do, sure. My hands tightened around the phone. You didn't mean to hurt me. You've been pretending to be me. Sure. Taking my memories, my achievements, my relationship, And you didn't mean to hurt me. She didn't answer right away, but I could hear her breathing, deep and uneven. I wanted to be like you, she whispered. I wanted to be good enough. The words hit me harder than I expected. It was almost like I could hear the cracks in her voice, the vulnerability she was too proud to show before. Tessa, I said softly, trying to steady myself, you are enough. But not because you copy me. You have to find out who you are without stealing from others. You can't just take my life and expect it to make you feel whole. There was another pause. It felt like time was stretching on forever. Then she spoke again, more quietly this time. I don't know how. I let out a breath, realizing that I wasn't angry anymore. I was sad. Sad for her, and maybe even for myself. I can't fix this for you. You have to do the work, Tessa. I can't carry this for you anymore. There was a slight tremor in her voice when she spoke again. I don't know if I can make it right. I could feel the weight of her words, but I didn't have the answers. I wasn't her therapist, and I couldn't fix the years of insecurity that had driven her to this point. I don't know if you can either, I said, my voice soft but firm, but I can't be part of your fantasy anymore. I hung up, feeling a strange mix of relief and exhaustion. The conversation wasn't what I expected. I thought I'd be angrier, but instead I just felt tired. Tired of being gaslit. Tired of feeling like I was always the one who had to make things right. But it wasn't over. Tessa's actions had already caused so much damage. The lies, the manipulation, it all still hung between us like a thick fog. And while I had made it clear that I wouldn't tolerate her behavior anymore, I knew there was still so much left to unravel. The next day, I met with Oliver, needing to talk to someone who actually understood what I was going through. I wasn't sure where to start, but I knew I had to tell him everything. She called me, I said quietly, staring down at the table in front of us. And she sounded lost, like she didn't know how to fix this, but she wanted me to help her. Oliver looked at me, his expression softening. What did you tell her? I told her that I couldn't fix her. I replied, that she had to figure it out on her own, but part of me wonders if she can. Oliver reached across the table and took my hand. You did the right thing. You can't save her. You've already been through too much. I nodded, the weight of it all sinking in. I had done what I could, but now it was up to Tessa to take responsibility. The truth was out in the open, and there was no going back. But even as I sat there with Oliver, I couldn't shake the feeling that this was only the beginning. Tessa might have been exposed, but the mess she had created wasn't going to be easy to clean up. I hadn't heard from Tessa since our conversation, and part of me hoped that she'd finally started to reflect on what she'd done. But the other part of me, the part that had been living in the shadow of her lies for so long, wasn't so sure. She had a way of twisting things, of turning the situation around until it was everyone else's fault but hers. I wasn't sure I could trust her to take responsibility for the damage she had caused. But the next few days were quiet. There was no drama, no more posts from Tessa trying to pass off my life as hers. I almost started to believe it was over. Maybe Tessa had finally realized the weight of her actions. Maybe the confrontation had been enough to wake her up. But as I sat in my apartment with Oliver one evening, scrolling through my phone, I saw something that made my stomach drop. It was a message from my dad. Can we talk tomorrow? He had written. It's about Tessa. I stared at the screen, my fingers frozen on the keyboard. Of course it was about Tessa, I hadn't spoken to him in days, not since the party. Since everything had come out in the open. Since I had told him how hurt I was. I thought that maybe, just maybe, he'd start to understand. Maybe he'd start seeing the situation from my perspective. But now, here he was, reaching out to talk about her again. I took a deep breath and texted back. Sure, let me know when. The next morning, I met him at a coffee shop near my place. He was already sitting at a corner table when I arrived, his hands wrapped around a cup of coffee, looking a little more tired than usual. When he saw me, he gave me a small, strained smile, but I could see the worry in his eyes. Rin, I'm sorry, he said as I sat down across from him. I know I've been distant, and I don't want you to think I don't care about what happened. I do. I nodded, but I didn't speak. I wasn't sure if I could trust myself to say anything that wouldn't come out wrong. I didn't want to lash out. I just wanted him to listen. He cleared his throat and shifted in his seat. I spoke to Wendy last night, and I think I finally understand what you've been trying to tell me. I stared at him, unsure of what to say. I wanted to believe him, but part of me couldn't shake the feeling that this was just another excuse, another way for him to avoid facing the truth. He continued. I didn't realize how deep it all went with Tessa. I didn't see how much of her life she was trying to take from you. I thought it was just, I don't know, some phase she was going through. But this is something else. I leaned back in my chair, trying to keep my composure. So what are you going to do about it? Sure. I asked, my voice quiet but firm. Tessa's been lying to everyone, Dad. She's been taking everything from me, and you never saw it. You didn't believe me when I told you. I need you to understand how much that hurt. He looked down at his coffee, his fingers drumming lightly on the cup. I didn't see it, Erin. I know I should have, sure. I should have believed you when you said something wasn't right. But I didn't. He paused and took a deep breath before continuing. I'm sorry for that. I want to make things right, but I don't know how. His words hung in the air between us, heavy with the weight of everything that had happened. I wanted to be angry, but the sadness was too overwhelming. How could I be angry when my father was finally starting to see the truth? I don't know what to say to you, Dad, I said, my voice catching in my throat. You can't just fix this with an apology. It's not that simple. I know, he replied, his voice soft. But I'm trying, Erin. Sure. I'm trying to understand. I looked down at my hands, feeling the pressure in my chest. It wasn't just Tessa anymore. It was everything. The years of her pretending to be me, of my father not believing me, of Wendy's constant defense of Tessa's behavior. How could I ever go back to the way things were? How could I trust any of them again? I looked up at my dad, and for the first time in a long while, I saw the vulnerability in his eyes. What about Tessa? I asked quietly. Sure. What are you going to do about her? His face tightened, and I could see the weight of that question pressing down on him. I'm going to talk to her. I've already spoken to Wendy, and she's agreed that Tessa needs help. Real help. Not just therapy, but a deeper look at what's going on with her. I don't think she understands how far she's gone, Erin. She doesn't get it yet, sure. I nodded slowly, unsure of what to feel. Was this enough? Was this really going to fix things? I didn't know. Sure. But I wasn't sure I could keep waiting for everyone to figure it out. I don't know if I can forgive her, I said, my voice trembling. I don't know if I'll ever be able to. She's stolen so much from me, sure. And I'm tired, Dad. I'm so tired. He reached across the table and placed his hand over mine. I know, sweetheart. I know, and I'm so sorry. I just need you to know that I'm here. I'm gonna help fix this. I'm gonna do better. For a moment, I sat there, staring at his hand on mine, trying to figure out if I could trust him. I wanted to, but after everything, I wasn't sure if I could. I need time, Dad, I said finally. I need time to figure out what I need from all of this. I'm not ready to fix anything yet. He nodded, his face full of regret. I understand, and I'll wait. Whatever you need, Erin, sure. I took a deep breath, feeling the weight of his words. Part of me wanted to believe him. But part of me knew that this was going to take much more than words. It was going to take time, and I wasn't sure I had enough of it to give. The conversation ended shortly after that. But I couldn't shake the feeling that something had shifted. My dad was finally starting to see the full extent of what had happened, sure. And maybe, just maybe, he was starting to understand what I had been going through all along. But I still didn't know if I could trust him. Or if I even wanted to. It was a few days after the coffee shop meeting with my dad, and I was still processing everything he had said. The regret in his voice had been real. But I wasn't sure it was enough to heal the wounds Tessa had caused. It felt like the whole situation was one big tangled knot, and every time I tried to pull at it, it only seemed to get worse, sure. But there was no going back now. I had to face this head on, even if it meant walking through the storm, sure. The first real test came when Tessa finally reached out again. I had been waiting for it, but that didn't make it any easier when her message finally appeared on my screen. I'm sorry, she wrote. I know I've hurt you, and I know I've made a mess of things. But I want to fix it. Please give me a chance to make things right. I stared at the words for what felt like an eternity. Sure. I had been waiting for this moment, for her to finally take responsibility. But now that it was here, I didn't know what to say. Could I forgive her? Sure. Could I really let her back into my life after everything she had taken from me? I ran my fingers over the edge of my phone, the cold screen making my hand feel numb. For months, sure, I had been living in a shadow of her lies, a shadow that had followed me into every corner of my life. I had kept quiet, hoping someone would notice, hoping someone would believe me. And now, here I was, facing the person who had caused all that pain. And I didn't know if I had the strength to confront her again. I took a deep breath and started typing. Tessa, I don't know if you understand how deep this goes. I wrote. You've been pretending to be me for so long, taking everything that was mine, and it hurt. It hurt more than I can explain. Sure. You can't just say sorry and expect everything to be okay. I can't just forget everything. I stared at the message, waiting to see if I would hit send. Was this the right thing to say? Was it enough? Or was I just pushing her away even more? Before I could decide, my phone buzzed again. It was a reply. I know. I'm sorry, Erin. I don't expect you to forgive me. But I need you to know that I'm trying. Sure. I'm trying to figure out why I've done this and how to fix it. I don't want to be like this anymore. I don't want to steal your life. The words felt hollow, like a weak attempt at absolution. They were exactly what I had wanted to hear, but somehow, they didn't feel real. It was almost like she was trying to convince herself as much as she was trying to convince me. I can't just move on from this. I replied, my fingers trembling slightly as I typed. It's not that simple. You don't get to just undo everything you've done by saying sorry. It's going to take more than that. Her response came faster this time. I know, and I'll do whatever it takes. I'll go to therapy, I'll change. But I need you to believe me, Erin. Please. I just want to make things right. The desperation in her words hit me harder than I expected. For a moment, I felt a flicker of empathy for her, but it quickly faded. Empathy couldn't erase the months of lying, of stealing my memories and my life. I looked out the window, the sky darkening as the evening set in. It felt like everything was shifting again, like I was standing at the edge of something I didn't fully understand. Was this the end of it? Was this where Tessa's story finally unraveled? Or was this just the beginning of something even messier? I wanted to walk away, to put it all behind me, but there was something inside me that knew I couldn't. Not yet. Tessa had made a choice, and so had I. I typed again. I can't forgive you right now, Tessa. I need time to process this. I need time to figure out what I want from you, and I'm not sure I'll ever trust you again. The message felt final, but even as I hit send, I couldn't shake the feeling that I was only scratching the surface. There was still so much left to deal with. Later that night, I lay in bed, staring at the ceiling. The silence in the house felt suffocating. I kept replaying Tessa's words over and over in my mind, trying to make sense of them. But the more I thought about it, the more I realized that nothing would ever be the same again. I had spent too much time feeling like I didn't matter. Like my feelings didn't matter. Tessa had taken everything from me, and now I had to take it back. But the road ahead didn't feel clear. I wasn't sure what the next step was. All I knew was that I couldn't go back to the way things were. The next day, I sat down with Oliver and told him everything. I told him about the messages, about my father's attempts to make amends, and about the strange feeling of being torn between wanting to believe that Tessa could change and knowing that she had hurt me too much to ever be trusted again. Oliver listened quietly, his hand on mine, and when I finished speaking, he said, You don't have to make any decisions right now, Erin. You're allowed to feel however you feel. I'm here for you, whatever you need. His words meant more than I could say. For the first time in months, I felt like I wasn't alone in this. Like there was someone who truly understood. But even with Oliver by my side, I knew this was far from over. Tessa's apology hadn't been enough. It couldn't be. As I sat there, I felt a strange sense of clarity. I wasn't sure where this was going or how it was going to end, but I knew one thing for sure. I wasn't going to let Tessa steal my life from me any longer. And I wasn't going to let anyone else tell me how I should feel about it. I had to find my own way forward, and that meant setting boundaries that no one could cross, no matter how hard it was, no matter how much it hurt. I was done being the one who kept quiet. The day of the engagement party arrived, and everything felt surreal. I had spent the entire week vacillating between anger, confusion, and the odd sense of relief that came from knowing the truth was finally out. But when the day actually arrived, when I saw the invitation to Tessa's engagement party, sitting on my phone screen, everything came rushing back. The lies, the manipulation, the months of pretending like everything was fine when it clearly wasn't. I wasn't sure what I expected. Maybe some kind of confrontation, maybe Tessa finally admitting the full extent of everything she had done. but there was no way I could have prepared for what happened next. I showed up at the venue, feeling an uncomfortable knot in my stomach. It was a nice place, elegant and polished, exactly the kind of venue I had considered for my own engagement. The smell of fresh flowers and expensive food filled the air. The guests were milling around, chatting, sipping champagne. It almost looked like a normal event, except for the overwhelming tension hanging over it. I glanced around and spotted some familiar faces. Some were from my family, others from Tessa's new life that she had tried to intertwine with mine. There was my dad, standing with Wendy in a corner, speaking in low tones, as usual trying to be the peacekeeper. But it wasn't just the two of them anymore. It was the way Tessa had woven herself into every part of my family's story, every single person here somehow touched by her deceit. And I was sick of it. Tessa walked in a few minutes later, and the whole room seemed to hold its breath. She was wearing a white dress, my white dress, the one I had bought for my own engagement party before she had copied everything else. I could see the flicker of recognition in people's eyes as they took in the dress, and I could feel the weight of it. But Tessa didn't seem fazed. She was smiling, laughing, playing the role so perfectly that I almost felt like I was the one who was losing my grip on reality. I stood near the back, just out of sight, watching everything unfold, but no matter how much I wanted to leave, I couldn't. I had to be here. I had to see her face when everything she'd done came to light. And then it happened. She took the microphone, standing in front of the guests with the same practiced smile on her face. "Thank you all for coming," she said, her voice too high, too rehearsed. "This is such a special night. I can't wait to share it with all of you." I saw my dad looking at her with such admiration, such pride that I almost wanted to scream. He didn't see it, did he? He still didn't see the woman who had ruined so much, who had been slowly replacing me with herself, and he was praising her for it. I looked around the room, and my gaze landed on Oliver. He was standing near the bar, watching Tessa with the same sense of disbelief that I was feeling. I could see the tension in his posture, the way his eyes flicked between Tessa and me. He knew what was coming. We both did. And then Tessa made the mistake of announcing something I hadn't been prepared for. "Before we get to the fun part," she said, "I just want to tell everyone a little bit about my fiancé. You all know Oscar, of course." She smiled, the kind of smile that made people think she was about to tell them a secret, a joke they'd all be in on. "We've been together for a while now. He's the love of my life, and I'm so happy to share this moment with him." Her words stung, but it wasn't the fact that she was talking about a man I didn't know. It was the way she said it, like the entire room should believe her, like the last few months of deceit had somehow never happened. There was no Oscar. I'd never met him, never seen a photo of him, and neither had anyone else in this room. Yet there she was, pretending like he was the man of her dreams, standing next to a picture, perfect version of herself. I felt a pit in my stomach. I had heard enough. This had gone on long enough. It was time to expose her once and for all. I walked to the front of the room, my heart pounding in my chest. I didn't care who saw me, who heard me. I couldn't stay silent any longer. I needed to take back my life. Just as Tessa finished speaking, I stepped up to the microphone. The room went silent, and I could feel every single set of eyes turning toward me. It felt like I was standing on the edge of a cliff about to jump, but I couldn't stop. "Tessa," I began, my voice steady but firm, "you've been lying to all of us. To me. To everyone in this room. You've stolen my life, my memories, my experiences, and tried to pass them off as your own. But you can't keep pretending anymore. We all know the truth." Tessa's smile faltered just for a moment, but it was enough. She looked like a deer caught in headlights. Her mouth opened, but no words came out. For the first time, she looked like she wasn't in control anymore. "You've lied about everything, from your trips to Japan to your so-called perfect relationship with Oscar, who, by the way, doesn't even exist." I continued, the words pouring out of me, each one like a weight lifted off my shoulders. "I've been living with this for so long, letting you take everything from me, and I'm done. I can't do this anymore." The silence in the room was deafening. People looked at each other, confusion and shock spreading like wildfire. My dad's face was pale, his mouth slightly agape, as though he had just been slapped, and then, as if on cue, Oliver stood up. His voice rang out clearly across the room. "That's interesting, Tessa," he said, his eyes locked on hers, "because that's exactly how I met your sister. The room went completely still. Oliver continued. You've been telling this story about how you and Oscar met at a coffee shop, right? Down on 5th Street. Funny thing is, I was there that day, and that's exactly how Erin and I met. Down to the book she was reading, the coffee we were having. We've never heard of anyone named Oscar. I could see Tessa's face drain of color. Her eyes darted around the room looking for anyone to support her, but all she found were people staring back at her, confused and appalled. And that was when Bradley, Oliver's best friend, stood up. He was holding his phone, swiping through the screen quickly. I've known Oliver for years. Since high school. He never mentioned you, Tessa. Not once. And I've got the messages to prove it. Bradley pulled up a conversation on his phone, showing the room text messages between him and Oliver. He read them out loud, detailing the timeline of Oliver's past relationships, every person he had ever mentioned, and how Tessa was never in the picture. The realization hit the room like a wave. People started whispering among themselves, checking their phones, pulling up screenshots, connecting the dots. Tessa's face was now ashen, her hands shaking as she clutched her phone tightly to her chest. Her world was crumbling right in front of her, and there was nothing she could do to stop it. As the whispers turned to gasps, I finally let myself breathe. It was over. The evening felt like it had lasted forever. People milled about the venue, but I felt distant from it all. The confrontation had been a whirlwind, the truth finally laid bare for everyone to see. It should have felt like victory, but instead, there was an unsettling quietness that followed me. Tessa had fled, and my dad and Wendy were still reeling from the chaos that had just unfolded. I could feel the weight of all the eyes on me, but there was no more pretending, no more living in the shadows of someone else's lies. It was over. Oliver was beside me, his presence grounding me, pulling me back into the moment. He'd been a quiet strength throughout it all, but I could tell he was just as shaken by the events of the night. We stood together in the center of the room, watching as people began to recover from the shock. It was like a strange, uncomfortable silence had descended, but there was no turning back now. Tessa's world was crumbling, and I was done pretending it wasn't happening. Do you want to leave? Oliver asked, his voice soft, as if testing the waters. I hesitated, looking around the room at the guests, some of whom were still whispering, others glued to their phones, reliving the scandal. The air felt thick with tension. It had been a spectacle, and yet I wasn't sure what to feel. Was this the end? Or just another chapter in this long, painful story? No, I finally said, shaking my head. I'm not leaving. This is my moment too. Oliver gave me a small smile, his hand brushing mine. He understood, he always understood. You're right, he said. Let's take back the night. With a deep breath, I turned to face the room, the stillness of the moment settling into me. It was time to stop looking back. Let's go to the bar, I said, pushing forward through the crowd. Oliver followed, and I felt the shift inside me as we moved. No more hiding. No more pretending. No more fear. It was time to reclaim my life, to reclaim this night. We found a quiet corner by the bar, and I leaned against the counter, feeling the cool surface under my hands. The music had started again. A soft tune that felt almost too peaceful for the chaos that had just unfolded. But there was something comforting in it, a reminder that the world kept turning, even after everything had been exposed. Oliver stood beside me, his eyes scanning the room, but there was no longer a sense of anxiety in his posture. He had been my rock through all of this, and now we were here, together. So, what now? I asked quietly, looking up at him. What happens after this? He smiled, that calm, reassuring smile that made everything feel just a little bit better. No, we keep going. We build something real. Something for us. His words settled into me, and I could feel the weight of the moment lifting. Tessa's fantasy life was collapsing around her, but my life was mine. My truth was mine. I wasn't going to let her take that from me anymore. Oliver reached for my hand, gently threading his fingers through mine, and for the first time in a long while I felt at peace. The storm had passed, and while it had left scars, it had also cleared the air. The night went on, the atmosphere shifting from uneasy whispers to a tentative celebration. I saw my dad across the room, his face pale, still processing the events of the evening. I could feel the tension between him and Wendy, the awkwardness of their strained marriage. My heart ached for him, but I also knew there was nothing I could do. He had to face his own mistakes, just as I had to face mine. A few people came over to offer their apologies, others offering awkward congratulations for exposing the truth. It wasn't easy. Sure. There were no simple words to ease the pain that had been caused. But it felt like the first step toward healing. My healing? Sure. As the night wore on, the crowd began to thin, and soon only a handful of people remained. It felt good, the quiet settling in. But there was still a part of me that felt unsettled. Like the storm was still there, just waiting to rise again. I didn't want to worry about Tessa anymore. I didn't want to think about her lies or her manipulations. But I knew the truth would stay with me. Eventually my dad made his way over to me. His expression was full of regret, but there was also a sense of relief in his eyes. I had never seen him so vulnerable, and for a moment, I saw the man he used to be before all the confusion. "I'm sorry, Erin," he said quietly, his voice shaky. "I should have believed you. I should have done more." I nodded, feeling the familiar ache in my chest. "It's not just about you believing me, Dad. It's about me believing in myself again. I didn't realize how much I had lost until tonight." He seemed to absorb my words, his eyes distant, thoughtful. He didn't say anything more, but the apology was there, unspoken but clear. The night ended, but it felt like it had only just begun. I didn't know what the future held. I didn't know if Tessa would ever truly change, or if I would ever be able to forgive her for what she had taken from me. But for the first time in a long while, I knew I was going to be okay, and that was enough. As Oliver and I left the venue, the cool night air hit my face and I breathed deeply. This was my life. No one else's. And no one was going to take that away from me again.